Great. Well, it's time to get started. It's gone 2:30. Um, Welcome, everyone. It's absolutely brilliant to be able to spend the next hour with you, and I hope you find it useful. What's been lovely so far is the connection that we've already had, and the fact that people are saying where they're from and what they're doing. I hope this next hour is going to be useful for you. I'm going to get straight. I'm going to get stuck in. If we can go to the next slide, please. Jess? Oh, right, here we go. Look at this. We did talk about running the event on the same day of Earth Day, and it is, of course, the 50th anniversary. And I just couldn't help but put this image on. So the top image is Fifth Avenue, New York, on the 22nd of April, 1970. And the image below is one that I got off a webcam yesterday of Fifth Avenue, New York, on on the 21st of April. Quite some difference there in images. That millions of people took to the street in 1970 to protest around the quality of life, really, for people in regards to pollution, and I think we've inadvertently given planet Earth the best possible birthday by not being out and about. And it's quite a sensitive issue. At the same time, you know, I looked at what you can do on Earth Day, and it said perhaps you can turn on less lights in your office, or maybe you could go for a walk out in nature. And those things are what we don't go into the office now. We work from home, and most of us are going out for a 1 hour of getting out and experiencing nature. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but recognition for what Earth Day is about, and for the fact that it's the 50th anniversary today. So what is this going to be about? Why are we doing it? Next slide, please, Jess. Why are we here? We have worked with UN Global Compact, partnered with them on several occasions, and we wanted to bring together people at this time, because it feels really apt to bring people together to talk about challenges and opportunities around sustainability. So we wanted to provide an opportunity to think about ways in which we can move into a kind of learning and growth zone. So how can we take the situation we're in at the moment and move forward? We wanted to provide an opportunity for you to connect and share your insights and ideas with others. And we wanted to let you know about some of the events that we're running later on in the year. So that's the purpose. That's why we're here. Next slide, please. And how are we going to spend our time? Well, for the next 10 minutes, or maybe just a little bit less, we're just going to be doing some very quick introductions and a bit of context setting. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time, 20 minutes, exploring sustainability and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in the current context and some of the challenges around that. There's going to be a very short skills input, thinking about what it is that we need in order to, dare I say, thrive in this current and very complex crisis almost that we find ourselves in, from fear to growth. And then there's going to be an opportunity to hear more about the virtual Roadshow series that we're going to be delivering. Just a point on that, last year we ran a number of Roadshow events. Many of you may have attended them. UN Global Compact ran them throughout the UK, really successful. As a result of what's happening now, we still want to run those events, but we need to do them in a different way. So that's what we want to share with you. And then finally, there's an opportunity for you to ask any questions or any suggestions. Now, throughout this, next slide, please, throughout this hour, 50 minutes, you're going to hear a number of voices. You're going to hear from Steve Kenzie, who's the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact UK network, and then myself, Joe Appleby, and my colleague, Becca Shaw, who work for an organisation called Impact. And then there's a host of others that you may have already spoken with or heard from, Jess and Claire and Cynthia, who are also from UN Global Compact. We are absolutely a team when it comes to delivering this. So you'll hear us almost having conversations with each other during the next hour. So we'll be inputting various bits. I would say if you've got technical challenges, issues, you can private message Jess or Claire or Cynthia, and they'll be able to help you out. As I mentioned before, as much as possible, we will be asking you to we'll be wanting to share your points of view, your insights. You've all got lots of experience and knowledge to offer this group and all of us. So we will be asking for your input. We are also aware that we've got 119, 120 people on here at the moment. So managing that may at times be quite challenging, but we do want to hear from you. So please get involved. Right. So I think that's it. Just for other folk who may have just joined, if you've got the opportunity to, please put on your webcams. It's brilliant to see people. It really helps us to engage. So hopefully that gives you an idea of who we are, what we're doing. Without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Steve. Next slide, please.
Unmute. Hi, everyone. Absolutely thrilled to have so many of you joining us today as we shift our roadshow online. So a little bit more on who we are, because I had a scan of our attendee list, and as I said before we started, fantastic to see so many old friends checking in, but also lots of new friends who might not somehow be familiar with the UN Global Compact, and that is something we must correct. The UN Global Compact is a UN-supported corporate sustainability initiative, and we have over 10,000 companies around the world that have made the commitment to our 10 principles to support corporate sustainability, along with another 3,500 or more non-business initiatives of all types, NGOs, business associations, universities, trade unions, from all over the world. We are part of the world's largest responsible business initiative, connecting UK companies and other organizations in a global movement dedicated to driving sustainable growth. Next slide, please. The very essence of the Global Compact are 10 universal principles derived from UN treaties in the areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. This foundation upon which our initiative is built provides a rock-solid basis for any corporate sustainability program or supplier code of conduct. They are truly universal principles. These treaties were ratified by every country around the world, giving us, as I said, a foundation that really no other initiative in this space can match. Next slide, please. To join the Global Compact, and if you're not already in an organization that is, I would urge you to take a look. We're looking for a commitment from your CEO to three things. Firstly, to operationalize our 10 principles in everything that your business does. Secondly, to report annually on the progress that you're making towards doing this. And thirdly, to support the wider UN development agenda, which at the moment is very clearly the Sustainable Development Goals. Our role as an initiative is to support you in fulfilling these commitments that your CEO has made. So here in the UK, we have a network of over, there are over 540 organizations in the UK that are participating in the Global Compact, a smaller number that we engage with quite actively in our network. We organize in a normal year over 30 events to support our colleagues and members in delivering on this agenda. This year, we're going to do even more because we've really gone to some effort to ramp up our online offering, and we've got, just in the next 2 months, something in the neighborhood of 20 webinars that we're offering across a wide range of subjects. So we'd be very keen to speak with you about you getting more involved in Global Compact, and for those of you that are already members, getting you more involved in our activities. And I think that's my last slide. Am I not mistaken? What's next? Is it over to, yes, over to you, Joe. You're muted, I think.
You're right, I was launched off. I was on my second sentence already then. So this is who we are. It tells you a little bit about impact. We are not sustainability experts, but we work a lot around behavioural change. So we are members of UN Global Compact, and I'm proud to say that we were one of the first SMEs to sign up in 2005. And we have been supporting as much as possible the work of UN Global Compact, and delighted to be working alongside them to help embed the SDGs. So that's all I'm going to say. Let's get on with what we're going to do. So can we go to the next slide, please? Whew, there's a lot of words on that slide, isn't it? I'm normally not into slides with a lot of words, and many of you may have already seen this this slide before. I really like it in the way of thinking about the different places, the different zones that I am finding myself in, or as this says, this model, how I am choosing to be during COVID-19. And I'm sure that there are times when we are in the either fear or learning or growth zone. And I think that can change sometimes on a daily basis. And it says on fear zone about acting like sometimes I act like a victim and looking who to blame. I get irritated easily. Learning zone, I stop consuming things that cause me harm, from the news to what I eat and drink, or this idea of a growth zone, that you're absolutely thinking of others and how you can help, and living for the now and thinking about the future. I'm curious to know, for you personally, don't think about this for too long, less than 30 seconds, you've already maybe thought of the zone that you're tending to spend a higher percentage of your time in. Where is the zone that you are spending a higher percentage of your time in? Now, Jess, how can they tell us how they're doing that?
Okay, and again, I will apologise for the noise of the plumbers in the background there. But at the top of your screen, there should be kind of a green bar that says that you're seeing my screen, with a drop-down button, and one of those options says annotate. So if you click on annotate, there's lots of options there. I'd suggest picking the stamp. Yep, somebody's already found it. Pick a stamp and then just stamp it on the screen about where you're, or on the line, but where you're sitting.
Great. Don't think about it too much. I think for some of us, as soon as we get there, we're like, yeah, that's where I'm spending a month. Brilliant. There's some, and then there are no wrong or right answers to this. Actually, Becca, I work with you. I'm curious, where would you say that you are?
I bounce between two, the learning zone and the growth zone. I feel that I don't sit in just one. I kind of tend to bounce from one to the other, having spent the first week or so in fear. So I tend to be, I would say, right on the cusp of learning and growth at the moment.
Great, thanks. Brilliant. Well, it looks like there is a lot of people who's similar to you, Becca, around the learning and growth zone. We've got some lovely different squiggles as well. I'm kind of really appreciating that as well. Really good to see where you're at. And there's no, as I say, there's no right or wrong. There's just interesting to see where you're at in relation where other people are at. And it's definitely a clump. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we've thought about ourselves on this model. I'd now like you to think about your organisation, or the organisation you represent, or the community group that you represent, or the whatever it is that you feel associated with, the community. Where do you think they are in relation to fear, learning and growth? Where do you think your organisation is sitting? Oh, interesting. There's a bit more of a shift, isn't there? It looks like there's definitely some ones that are right out there in the growth zone, like looking for opportunities, adapting, being agile, being responsive. And yet there's a little bit, there's definitely a lot more in the learning zone. And in the learning zone, there are some that are closer to the fear zone. There's a report that I saw from Forbes that talked about the CEO, because even CEOs can be on here too, and they talked about the CEO in fear or learning or growing. And my question to you as I move on, and this is just a quick thing to just recognise where we are at and where our organisations are at. And I'm just for you to think about where you put yourself and where you put your organisation. What was the difference? And my question of reflection is, if I'm feeling fearful, if I'm in the fear zone, does that mean I perceive others to be in that zone as well? Or if I'm in the learning zone, am I looking for opportunities in the organisation and therefore see that there are opportunities to be had? So just a reflection. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you very much for taking part in it. Really good to see, to acknowledge just where different people are at. But it does look like there's a real shift in organisations being in that growth zone. Certainly seeing that from Impact in the way it's being very agile in the moment. Okay, great. So that's a little bit about us and our organisations. The next slide, please, takes it a little bit further and looks at, in terms of the COVID-19, in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. My question to you, and I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. So again, I'm going to ask you to get involved using the chat box. My question this time is, out of all of the SDGs, which goal is most impacted by the pandemic and why? So if you can just put a tick in or a mark in the goal that you think is most impacted, and then in the chat box, tell us why. And it might be a good news story, and it might not be it might be a not so good story. It doesn't matter, but tell us what it is, the reason why you put your mark in, and let's see which one comes up, if any. It may well be that there's a really equal spread. And while you're doing that and writing in chat, Claire and Jess are going to have a look at that. And Steve, can you just give us a 30 to 60 seconds on what the SDGs are for those who may not have come across them before?
Sorry about that. I couldn't get my mute button to appear, or my unmute. So yeah, I mean, obviously we've made some assumptions today that you're all very familiar with SDGs, but just in case you're not, the Sustainable Development Goals passed in 2015 unanimously. Every UN member state has signed up to this set of 17 goals with 169 more specific targets beneath them that are intended to deliver the future we want by 2030, and leaving no one behind, and really creating a society in which people can prosper in an environment that prospers with peace and security and really fulfilled lives. And it's the result of the largest consultation that the UN has ever taken. And it truly is a representation of the future we want. So I don't use that turn of phrase lightly. And of course, if you haven't heard of it, that is a bit remarkable. It's really been embraced by companies large and small. I see we've got quite a few folk here from Bristol. There's a city that's been just outstanding in its engagement around this agenda, really taking to heart, and local government policy explicitly pursuing an SDG agenda. Of course, our national government is also pursuing this agenda, perhaps not as explicitly as we would like, but really it's a great organizing framework, a great way to mobilize resources and partners to achieve an objective. And so far so good, but we're a third of the way in. It was passed, as I said, in 2015. So we're in now what we're calling the decade of delivery. We've got less than 10 years now to achieve this agenda. And it's ambitious, but not impossible. And so we're all really working hard to raise awareness, mobilize action, and get this done.
Thanks, Steve. Brilliant. And I'm going to go across to Claire and Jess. What's coming up? What have you noticed in chat? It's been busy on chat. I'd love to hear what you've noticed, or what you've seen, or if there's any themes.
So many people are actually highlighting the fact that all of the goals have been affected in some way or another because of the fact they're all linked, and maybe it shows how unprepared we were in the first place. And if we had made a bit more progress on the goals at this stage, we might have been able to tackle this a little bit better.
Yeah, there's lots of people there saying about inequalities, and I think that's something that's really striking, isn't it? That, you know, we're all being hit by the same thing, but we're all experiencing it completely different ways, and kind of the vast inequality that that's having between whether it's gender and race, or, you know, lots of people on the chat box are now kind of bringing out poverty and some of those interrelated issues again.
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, I agree. Yeah, that's obviously good health and well-being. Of course, that's the one that we tend to get. Of course, it's affecting everyone's health and well-being in negative ways, but there are some positives as well. It highlights kind of inequality issues. And I think with the decent work and economic growth, I recently listened to an interview with Paul Pullman, who talked about the saints and the sinners, the organisations out there who are really stepping up and providing a huge amount of support for their people and for their employees, and for keeping supply chains going, which are a real issue. And there are others that perhaps aren't. And we can see it's very visible, those organisations that are doing well and those that aren't. But again, it looks at, for me, this recognition that the SDGs are very much interrelated, and that if you impact upon one, it will have impacts in the other. There's some great comments in here. Strain on health services and people's well-being. They're all affected, yes. No poverty and good health and well-being. Huge economic impact. And I think we'll come on to that later around the role of sustainability when there is huge economic downturn, and where our priority might be for sustainability issues as we move out of COVID-19, and I think we'll touch on that. The pandemic has brought home human capital and the real and social and economic loss due to inequalities. Virtually all goals affected, we've got that one. Also hope that the positive influence, absolutely. There was a recent YouGov poll that said that only 9% of Britons want to return to normal life following from COVID-19. That clean air, more wildlife, stronger communities. Brilliant. There's some really good stuff in here, and I think it would be great if we can try and capture this and share this, because there's some good news stories in there as well. Great. So that's looked at, and see if there's any other. Goal 8, maybe improves people need to, yes, innovation. Incredible innovation that's happening right now. NHS, they've been trying to do telephone and web-based surgeries for about 5 years. They've always come up against huge barriers. Now that's it, it's all gone overnight. Webcams in doctor surgeries and doing it that way. So there are some great benefits. Next slide, please. And we're going to extend that idea of what else we're noticing, so not just in relation to the SDGs, but other things. And carry on sharing us what you've noticed either in your local communities or in your organisations. Jess, tell me about one of the photos you put here.
Yeah, I put a couple up actually. So one of them is at the top there with the goats, and that was in a town in Wales. And it's just incredible. You're seeing in the news all of these reports about wildlife kind of returning to those places, or even just taking over these urbanized areas just because there's nobody there. And I just think that's brilliant. And then, yeah, the other one I put up there was the picture of the rainbows, that we're seeing all these lovely messages in people's windows. And what I find amazing is that, you know, a couple of months ago, we were a country of real divides. You know, we were Brexiteers and Remainers, and now everybody, there's just a lot more solidarity and a lot more hope, which I think is something that I'm really noticing.
Great.
So the picture I've noticed is this man with the tape in the corner. And that particular picture is from Berlin, where they started to widen the bicycle lanes to ensure people had room to social distance when they were cycling or traveling to work. And it recently came out, I think only a couple of days ago, that Milan have this plan in place to reimagine the whole city centre, and they're cutting it all off to cars. And this just came about because of COVID-19. So I know now in London as well that that's kind of, a lot of the boroughs are hoping to do something similar. And in Hackney, they're closing down some of the streets. And it just shows that maybe something bad happened, but will have positive impact. And I just found that really interesting because it seemingly was impossible to do before, but now all of a sudden it's happening all over Europe.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And we're getting some other good comments in here. Recognise the different leadership styles from different governments and how they've impacted on the SDGs, but also increasing anger and frustration coming out too. Mask wearing debate, keeping social distances. I definitely echo the climate point. Yeah, clean air, brighter colours, calm seas. I've put Jacinda here because, you know, she is probably the greatest leader on living on the planet, with her very consistent and honest and truthful communications, not just with communicating to public, but also how she works with colleagues as well, holds people accountable, and it's pretty impressive. One thing is, it says a comment here, one thing that's floored me is the level of new collaborative work done across the globe. An example is the giant hackathon that I'm involved in the weekend with international teams looking to deliver innovative solutions to solve the various issues, problems. Great. Maybe send that link. It might be something other people might be interested in getting involved in. There was another 2-day hackathon, I think a couple of weeks ago, around how we can address the SDGs through innovation. So great, this amount of really, I think one thing I recognize is that there are no longer people, there is no longer one single leader that knows everything. This idea of collaborative working and the fact that we can all take acts of leadership, or we can all step in to do something for others is possible. We just have to look at Captain Tom, I think, and the work that he's done.
There's some lovely comments on here too about, you know, people, families walking together, and there's so many more people out there running and actually taking the time to look after their health, and lots more communities, which, yeah, I think is something that I'm noticing definitely here as well.
Fantastic. Okay, it's simplified a lot, hasn't it, Matthew? Absolutely. Gosh, my life is so much easier at the moment, even though it's quite busy and complex with kids and homeschooling. Actually, I feel there's less logistics, I'm finding. Less logistics. Okay, brilliant. Again, I'm hoping that we can collate these and share them with you. So there's some great stories here that might help others. Okay, take a breath. Okay, we're going to move on to something else now, and it's something for you to look at. Oh. And is the slide there, Jess, about, there we go. So, can
you see that? There should be a link there at the top which says where to go. So if you've got another internet browser open, or even on your phone, if you can type that in and use the code, we'd love to know what word describes your reaction to this image.
And just to let you know, while you're doing that, I'm going to be silent for a couple of minutes, just to let you get through to that website or to that page, and just think about that image. And then we'll be able to see the words that you use in a kind of word art form. So you won't hear from me for the next minute, but I am here.
I like facepalm a lot. I would, I think, go back in and vote for that.
So obviously what happens with word art is the more people that say the same word, the larger the word becomes. Slapped forehead. Hopeful.
Gosh, that reality and that truth is really staying there in the middle, isn't it? Really big.
Yep.
It hasn't moved, has it? Truth and reality are solid, powerful, really powerful words.
Some people can't see the image, Jess. Is it possible to flick back to it one more time and go back again, or?
There you go. Can you see the image at the moment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. Maybe I'll leave it up there for a few more seconds. Okay. Let's see if that's changed.
Might be trying to catch up now.
Yeah.
Global, chance to practice, unprepared, unsurprising, fear, denial, truth, hopeful, pessimistic. There is a fantastic range of different emotions or thoughts that have been evoked from that one image. A real spread, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And while you're, for those of you maybe who haven't put the word in yet or just interested in reading, I'd just like to invite Steve's point of view. If you'd like to share what, in a little bit more, rather than just one word, Steve. I'd be slightly upset if you just gave me one word. But could you share with us what this kind of means for you?
Sure. Well, I think it really highlights, well, in fact, the messages that we've seen in the chat from a number of people around the opportunity that is presented now almost by this crazy reset that's been done. Before any of this began, I think many of us in the sustainability community would have railed against business as usual. And I think it's really quite perverse that, you know, now we find ourselves wanting to get back to normal. And so I think we need to really, you know, resist that turn of phrase and resist that sentiment. We don't want to go back to the old normal. We want to take advantage of this opportunity to lock in some of the positives that we've already identified in the chat earlier, while we try to lock those in and then move away from the negatives. I think it's really been fascinating to see previously really unimaginable transformations in society and in the economy that have taken place over the space of just a few weeks. Now we have, you know, as those scientists in the image turn around, we have an even bigger challenge. Now, fortunately, we have more time to work on it, but given the scale, the urgency is really no less than the urgency we've been feeling around the virus. We've got to start taking action. We've got to wake up. And I think we need to apply some of the things we've learned about just what is possible. What is society willing to do when the need demands it? And so the transformation we've seen in society over the last few weeks is just got to be, I think, a trial run for the even bigger transformation that we're going to need as we go forward in decarbonizing the economy, bringing about the equality that we all want to see so desperately. Thanks. You're muted, Joe.
Honestly, those words of wisdom that came out then were just unbelievable. No, I think, yeah, thank you for that, Steve. I really appreciate it. And I think for a lot of people, like someone sent me that image and I really wanted to forward it on, but I felt like uncomfortable doing it. I kind of thought, you know, right now with what's happening, is it an insensitive thing to do? Like, there's a lot of people, and this is COVID-19 is causing a huge amount of pain, and it's a really challenging situation. And I just thought, well, when is going to be the right time to have a conversation about sustainability and about beyond this virus? And as we've all acknowledged, there's so much that we're learning. There's so many positives, as well as some shocking truths and very difficult situations. How can we, the word, I guess, or the sentence that I picked up again from Paul was, how can we build a more stable and just world after the crisis? You know, he says you can't piggyback on COVID-19. You can't do that. In terms of what's important, it's people, it's your business community, it's keeping supply chains going. We can see the implications of supply chains. Certainly there was statistic a couple of weeks ago, textile, 2.5 billion orders were just cancelled. The implications for workers in Bangladesh is astronomical. So trying to keep supply chains going, keeping citizens and communities where the business operates, and having helping government. And number 6 of that list is climate change and the SDGs. So that's his list of priorities. I'm not saying Paul Pullman knows everything, but it's interesting, his point of view, who obviously, for those who don't know, is ex-CEO of Unilever, and is very much passionate around the SDGs and the global goals. So when is it okay for us to have that conversation around beyond COVID-19? What are some of the stories? And I think we've seen some of them here. The stories that will help us, the stories that we need to share that might help us to create change following COVID-19. So that's the kind of question that I'd like you to maybe have a think about, is what is it that you've heard? What is it you've seen? What are those positive stories that you can go back to people within your organizations and start thinking about kind of plans for beyond the pandemic? I spoke again or I heard again from a head of sustainability in a construction company. And she said, look, we've got grand plans for 2030. We cannot talk about that. We can't go out to our stakeholders and talk about it. It's not appropriate. Right now, what we need to do is focus on our people who are still working, think about pollution and think about safety. But these things are, but what we can do is we can plan, we can gather, what are we noticing? What are we noticing? And how can we plan for beyond the virus? So what is it that you've had to let go of in your role? Because I know for sustainability, you've worked really hard to get traction and get kind of focus on some of these projects. What is it you have to let go of? And what is it you're actually doing? So if you could, again, one last time to share a few things that you've had to let go of, and maybe something that you're doing instead. It might be really useful for others to see that. What is it you've let go of, you've stopped doing temporarily, and what is it that you are doing that you're finding quite positive? Let's just have a minute to share some of those in chat, and then we're going to go across to Becca, who's going to share with you a model.
I'm just going to interject. I just seen a comment from Rob about how can we pick out the elements of the new normal that we actually want to adopt. And just to say that, how indeed, and that's the challenge that we're taking on with the UK network of Global Compact, and a lot of our programming over the course of the lockdown, however much longer it takes, is that's the question that we really want to explore. How do we do it? And we're going to obviously start at the level of, really for us, it's company by company, but obviously we also want to lead to system change and getting some of that learning, locked into policy and creating a bigger change. And of course that we're part of a bigger global network. And so we start with getting change that works at the level of a company, up to the level of a nation, up to the level of a planet. But yeah, I think that's really the essential question, I think, right now is, what are the key learnings? that are actually going to be possible to lock in and scale up and apply to the bigger challenges that we face going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Any other? There's lots of comments. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. Georgina says it would seem necessary to provide clear, practical ways by which some of the damage caused by the economic fallout of COVID-19 can be repaired without simply ramping up production consumption cycles of before. Absolutely. And that's my fear with this sometimes, is that that's going to be the main driver. Economic downturn, we need to get up, we need to be making money. Is sustainability going to take a back step or a back seat in that?
Sophie has shared here, she said priorities for the business have changed or shifted. There's now more time to learn and develop.
All right, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sophie. Focused on supporting businesses through this challenging period, but also working with partners to plan recovery. Great. Because that's what it's going to take in order to change, isn't it? Is this collaboration of other partners. So who are those partnerships? Who are those organizations, those different community groups or NGOs that we need to get closer to think about how we might work together to tackle some of these issues? This is a great time to start thinking about that. I'm just going to read out a couple more of these. Kirsty says, I've given up trips to the coast, but gained so much health and well-being wise, and by slowing down and using this time positively, especially with exercise. Business wise, much more focused on key priorities and using this time to push forward work streams that need more thinking time. Great. It's a great, in a way, it's a luxury to have this time to think. We don't normally have it. We're constantly doing. So that's brilliant. Lots of great comments there. Again, I think we need to be able to share these. What I'd like to do now is just move on to share a model with you that Impact has designed, that Becca is going to talk you through, that might be quite useful. If we go back to that model before, when we were looking at fear through to growth, what are some of the things we might need to help us move along that line? So thank you for those comments. We will feed them back to you. Becca.
Thank you, Jo. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by all the comments. It's great to hear from so many people. Can you pop the slide along one, please? Thank you. Okay, so when we use the word to thrive, as Jo just referred to, if you think back to Jo's model earlier, it's moving from a fear zone to a growth zone. So when we talk about to thrive, it's about growing and developing ourselves. So this model is one that we use at Impact, and we've been using it with our clients and internal teams. And we believe there are 5 key elements that we need to pay attention to in order for our teams and ourselves to thrive as individuals in this uncertain times and for the future. So if we look at the model, one of the big parts and key parts at the moment is belonging, that feeling accepted and that our work is important. And it has 3 lenses, the feeling connected to our business and to others, and that feeling relevant, where we can relate to business activity. You know, is there a sensitivity about talking about sustainability, how we talk and articulate that at the moment, and that feeling that we have a meaning and purpose right now, and what is the effect if we don't? So we feel that's quite a key part. The courage, so being courageous, that courage to be yourself, that courage to step up, to take a shift and embrace that change, and to step up and seek forgiveness and maybe do things outside of our comfort zone. And being amongst the right conditions, especially now virtually, physically and psychologically, having that permission to work from home, having the right equipment, having some structure to your day. I know for me, I'm struggling to leave my desk. I spent 3 solid days at my desk and I haven't got out for a break. I haven't gone and got a coffee. I haven't spoken to my colleagues. So it's making sure that you have the right conditions and you take that time for yourself. Feeling capable. So not only having the skills and knowledge, but also the hardware, the broadband, the internet. Today, as a run through for this, my internet completely dropped. I couldn't get on. And instead of just it being the norm and it being okay, Joe got very worried about me because of the circumstances that we now face, and it's so different that Joe was, sorry, go on Joe, you can say something.
Well, no, I just went into, I almost went back into fear. I was like, what's happened to her? What's happened? She's by herself. She's in an apartment by herself. And then I was like, have I got her mobile phone number? Do I have that? And I thought, well, hang on, I wouldn't normally do this. So that kind of thing, like I would just look out a bit more. So I think it heightened sense, but
yeah. And then hope, you know, how can we share stories of hope and resilience and light at the end of the tunnel? I think storytelling is very important to give people around us that hope and optimism. So I would invite you to have a look at this and sort of notice what's happening for you. Maybe one area that resonates with you most, or one that you feel that you may need to work on. You can either type it in the chat box, or potentially we might invite, we don't have very long, but maybe just hear from one or two people just verbally, just to be a bit different. If somebody would like to talk to us, that would be great.
Can I ask Rob to say something? He's already written it in the text, but it's quite
Yes.
interesting. It'd be great. Rob, do you mind sharing what you said, please?
No, not at all. I'll have to go back up and read it just to make sure I get the words right. I think I just said that on this graphic. I think it's important to add and recognise the need to take control of the things that you can take control of, but also to accept and recognise the things you can't control and put them to one side. I think in a situation, particularly the situation we're going through at the moment with COVID-19, and also moving into kind of like turning around and facing the very large wave we just saw on the graphic. I think if people need to thrive, they need to understand what they can control and influence. Somebody made a great build on my comment there. Influence is really important, and then influence those things, control those things for yourself, such that you're in a very firm position to move forward, and try not to be destabilised by the things that are out of your control.
Thank you for that. That's great feedback. And you know, as I say, this has come from us doing the limited research that we've done in this current situation, and sort of putting this together based on clients. And so I will certainly pass that back. Thank you. Anybody else would like to say anything at all?
It's Andy.
Hi, Andy.
I keep reciting things to people in the whole world about the fact that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And at the moment, this step might just be in our living room, but we can take it and we can keep taking it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So Joe, back to you, my dear.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just noticing how fantastically engaging you all are by contributing so much useful. I mean, I could just sit here and look at the chat, to be honest. Can someone else run this now? Can I just read the chat? Because there's so much good stuff on there. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have really just touched on a few elements there, and I think there's room for us to have a much deeper conversation than what we've managed to have in the last kind of 50 minutes now. But I think, thank you very much, Becca, for doing that. I think there are things that we can do that will help us to be the best of ourselves in these difficult times. And just to summarize, what we've tried to do at the beginning of this is just understand where we are on this kind of fear learning growth line. And we've looked at how the Sustainable Development Goals are impacted by COVID-19. And we've also looked at what we're noticing, the good and the not so good, and been thinking about what we can do within our roles to keep the sustainability agenda as high up as it was 6 months ago, because it was really high on a lot of organizations' agenda. We need to keep it there. What are the stories that we can share? And hopefully we can look, the model that Becca's provided gives you a sense for some of the things that you might be able to take control of to enable you to kind of to thrive or to be in that growth zone. We are going to move this part of the webinar to a close as we start now thinking about what's coming up next. I hope that's been useful for you. I'm now going to stop talking and let UN Global Compact do some stuff. Oh, there's some questions there. Move on, you'll get those questions. There's some good things for you to think about, but not today, not in this moment. Now we're going to look at the roadshows.
All right, thanks very much, Joe. Thanks, Becca. As Joe mentioned right at the beginning, we've been doing a Global Goals Roadshow actually since 2017. We took it on back then out of frustration at the general lack of awareness around the UK about this really, we felt, critically important agenda. And so from then we started visiting cities around the country and holding events to try and raise awareness and catalyze action. We did not, well, and we actually were all geared up to do it again, and we got a great event in Stoke mid-Feb, and then it all ground to a halt. And so we want to keep that energy going. We think the mission remains critical. So we are planning a number of virtual events around this agenda. And for some of you, well, actually not there anymore, but it is very much our intention to still do some place-based events, because I think it's so critical, this whole idea of making global goals local business. So much of the action is happening at the city level. So it is our intention to focus and try to convene people from a geographical area to come together in this platform so that we can also discuss some of the issues that are more localized for you, as well as the bigger global ones. So we're going to have a mix. The next one up, 20th of May, we're going to focus in on Goal 8, and we'll have I think it'll be a very interesting and, again, interactive program, drilling down to what are the implications for business of Goal 8. Then next up, we'll be going to Belfast. And then the Edinburgh edition, we might even say the Scottish edition, but we'll try to target folk from Scotland to talk about some of the SDG issues there. London on the 2nd of June, Goal 12th on the 9th. We're going to see how all this works, but it's very much our intention to do more than just this. So we'll be really happy to have your suggestions about where else we might come, what other themes you might like us to address, and we will try to fit that into our other upcoming events, because of course the Global Goals Roadshow is just a part of the many things that we're getting up to. Science-based targets for climate change. We think that is a critically important initiative and something that absolutely every company should be taking very seriously. We're running a series of 6 webinars, I think, looking at what it takes to open or to launch, to set science-based targets for carbon emissions for companies from different sectors. So we urge you to have a look at our website and participate in one of those. We're doing those webinars in partnership with Carbon Trust, and we think they're going to be fantastic. We have a webinar coming up on SDGs and innovation. We're collaborating with Mott MacDonald, a very innovative company, to deliver that. And we've got a bunch of other programming around SDGs and innovation in the pipeline. And one last thing. Well, firstly, I wanted to just go back briefly to the place-based webinars that we want. From the very beginning, our roadshow was intended as a way of supporting local grassroots organizations on their mission, and recognizing that the UN has some drawing power. We felt we could usefully support our colleagues operating at a more local level, and that's still very much our intention. with these place-based webinars that we've got teed up. So we're very keen to partner with you working in cities. The last thing, and I don't think we have a slide for it, and shame on us, it was an oversight that I didn't think of it sooner. And I'll beg Sir Mark not to mention it to anybody at HQ, is to mention the Global Compact Leaders Summit that's coming up on the 15th of June. I think this is going to be one of the most fantastic events ever launched. So I urge you to visit the Global Compact website and have a look at that. This is the 20th anniversary of the launch of the Global Compact, and we had a massive conference planned for New York at UN headquarters for the 15th and 16th of June. Now, after the UN headquarters, we were going to use a conference center, but it's now a hospital. And so that event has been canceled. Our colleagues in New York have done an extraordinary job of transitioning that program into a virtual conference. It's going to start at 8 a.m. New York time on the 15th, and it's going to go for 24 hours as we make our way around the world, chasing the sun, hearing from stakeholders in every region as we go around the world. Speakers already, we're going to have the UN Secretary General, heads of key UN agencies. We've got Al Gore lined up. We've got Mark Carney, Paul Pullman, leading CEOs from around the world. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic event, and I urge you to join us for that. Next slide. I don't remember what it is. Well, this is just going to be my last opportunity. A minute overdue, I apologize, but I really would be remiss in not thanking our sponsors for the Roadshow from the very beginning, Relax Group, Aviva, and N Brown Group. Without their support, it just would not be possible for us to deliver the Roadshow and likewise this virtual Roadshow. I'd like to thank Joe and Becca for their fantastic contributions today. As always, it's always a pleasure working with Impact. Thanks, Jess, Claire, and Cynthia for your hard work. And lastly, thanks very much to all of you for your fantastic contributions through the chat and throughout this whole session. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please tell your friends and encourage them to join us for the next stop in the Roadshow. I wish you a great afternoon. We're going to send the slides around as well as a little survey requesting your feedback. We would love to hear from you how we could have made this session better so that the people that follow you can enjoy the benefits of your wisdom. Now, I think we're going to just, we're going to quickly do have we already got our screenshot, Cynthia, with all of our happy, smiling?
Taking a screenshot of everyone.
Fabulous. All right. In which case, that's all. Thanks very much. Apologies for running 2 minutes over, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.